The movie opens up with a narration explaining some kind of bars, known as drop bars. Despite being normal bars, drop bars are places where mobsters constantly use to laundry their dirty money safely. In these places, money is constantly in and out of, and is transferred by bagmen to its final location. Bar owners never know when their bar will become a drop bar for safety reasons. At one of these bars, we get to know the main character of the movie, a bartender named Bob Saginowski. He is a quiet man with a murky past and a latent capacity for violence behind his gentle demeanor. The bar is run by his cousin, named Marv, while, in fact, it is owned by the Chechen mafia. A group of old-timers enjoying their time, drinking and chatting. While they're making a toast to their long-gone friend, Richie Whelan, who had mysteriously killed 10 years ago, Bob treats them with their next shot. But he is chastised by Marv, who believes it's business, not charities. He gets even more furious that his soft bartender allows an old woman to drink for free and smoke cigarettes illegally inside when he's not around. However, Bob believes he has just treated them kindly, but he finally takes his boss and older cousin's words. We also get to know that Bob is an obedient Catholic and a permanent churchgoer. One night, on his way back home, he hears a dog whimpering in a neighbor's trash can. Opening the trash, he finds the poor pit bull puppy severely injured, left to death. The homeowner, Nadia, appears, wanting to know who is snooping around her house. Bob explains her the situation and urges her to help the poor puppy. But Nadia is skeptical about him, asking him to show his license. She even takes his license picture and sends it over to some friends' phones to make sure Bob won't hurt him in any way. They then take the puppy in to dress his wounds. The puppy had some knots and contusions, implying he had been severely beaten. But luckily, the wounds are not too deep. During the conversation, Bob notices some bruises on Nadia's neck. It's also revealed that Nadia is a waitress at a restaurant, but has also worked at animal rescue for a while. They come to the conclusion that an animal rescue is not a good place to take good care of a dog, especially when Bob has already had pity on the poor puppy. Bob finally manages to convince Nadia to hold the dog until Bob takes the puppy back in 2 days. Somewhere in the street, two brothers are nervously talking. They plan to rob cousin Marv's bar. The elder brother is more confident that they must do this to show their superiors how well they can handle a risky business like this. While the latter, a drug addict, is scared to death, knowing it's a drop bar run by the gruesome Chechen mafia. But he is somehow convinced by his older brother in the end. Back to the bar, we see the store being held down by masked robbers just before the bar gets close. The robbers point the gun at them, instructing Marv to fill up the bag with all the money. Marv calmly warns them that they are messing with the wrong guys, and soon they're going to regret it. However, he is forced at gunpoint to do what they just said. During the robbery, Bob finds one of the robbers' watches broken. After the robbery gets done, Marv and Bob find the bar worker, Randy, beaten to death in the backyard. Later, a detective named Torres shows up to investigate. He knows Bob as they had both gone to the same church for years. However, they've never talked. On investigation, Bob hasn't much to say as the robbers were covered head to toe. But he reveals to the detective that one of them wore a broken watch which had stopped at 6:15. It's also revealed the robbed money was approximately $5,000. Besides the crime, Detective Torres wonders how Bob always skips communion at church, which Bob initially opposed. Torres questions once more whether or not it is true. Bob assures him, it isn't. While it's a lie, Bob feels embarrassed about confessing his notorious past, so he never takes communion to avoid the confession. Marv gets furious once he knows that Bob revealed the broken watch for investigation, believing the Chechens are going to be pissed. Bob shows up at a certain time and takes back the puppy. He also asks Nadia to accompany him to a pet store to buy some supplies, as he has never owned a dog before. Nadia picks up some bowls, a leash and a pop bag and a proper pet instruction book. Bob comes up with the idea of naming the puppy Rocco, but is more interested in Mike. Nadia takes Rocco but believes that Mike is a lousy name for a dog. So they make a Rocco name tag for him, while Bob still believes Mike is better. After the shopping gets done, Bob drops her off at home, while a thug named Eric Deeds is spying on them from a distance. The next morning, at church, Bob is surprised to find a statue of Saint Rocco, who had a dog. One morning, as the cousins are shoveling snow in the backyard, they are visited by Chavka, the Chechen mafia leader, who owns the bar. Chavka reveals that he has taken hostage one of the men who are behind the robbery. The man is badly tortured, gagged, and impaled by his foot, which bolted to the van floor. Chavka asked Marv and Bob if they knew this man, and they both reject it. He also wonders why the police knew about the broken watch, and Bob desperately apologizes. Chavka threateningly tells Marv to take the money back just before speeding off. Find my fucking money, yeah? Marv feels threatened because if he already knew how to get their money back, it would imply that he had something to do with the robbery, On the other hand, on his investigation, Detective Torres has found some evidence that since 10 years ago, Marv had lost his bar to a Chechen mafia called Papa Umarov, who is Chopka's father's name. He is talking to a colleague from the Major Crime Administration and asking her if they plan to take Papa Umarov down. But the latter responds that they are too powerful to bring down and also jokingly adds that Torres should feel free to stick with them. It's all his. Bob enjoys Rocco's company. However, he's still a rookie at dog care, making Rocco pee all around the house and forcing him to clean up the messes. One morning at a dog park, Bob is playing with Rocco when he is approached by Nadia, who is exercising. Nadia lost her night shift at work and offers herself to take care of Rocco for some extra cash. Bob, who is already attracted to Nadia, takes the offer without any hesitation, and they exchange numbers. After they depart, Eric Deeds shows up and tells Bob that he has a nice dog. But Bob, who is skeptical about Eric's look, takes Rocco and walks off. Marv lives with his sister, Dottie, while their father is held in a nursing home, dead-brained, plugging into a machine to stay alive a tad longer. The siblings discuss their father. Dottie is tired of all the overspending on their father, especially when it's pointless. Believing he doesn't live, though still alive, she offers Marv to unplug their father and enjoy their own lives, like traveling around Europe and stuff like that. But Marv harshly disagrees, believing that they must spend their whole life for their father now that they're unwilling to spoil their convenience by taking care of him. Marv meets up with one of the robbers, Fitz, revealing that he is really behind the robbery. He severely scolds Fitz not only because of his stupid brother, who wore a broken watch, but also because they hit Marty so badly, making them call an ambulance, which ends up getting cops involved in the case. He suggests that their bar become a drop bar soon, telling Fitz that they must perform the robbery much cleaner this time. Elsewhere in the street, a thug-looking stranger in a car asks Marv for the hospital address. Marv gives him the address, but there's something wrong with the guy, making Marv suspicious of him. Back to Bob's house, where he's talking with Rocco and apologizing to him that he can't take him out today. He gets a knock on his door, and Eric shows up at the door. Eric rudely welcomes himself inside. He asks where Bob put his puppy, which left Bob puzzled. He claims the dog is his, but Bob refuses. Eric says if Bob owns the dog, he has to have a security chip number and license by law. He then explains to Bob what a security chip is, which is implanted in dogs' bodies to reveal the owner's identity. Eric then shows Bob his security chip serial, implying that he is the owner. Bob insists Rocco is his because Eric always beats him. But the latter threatens that he'll put the blame on Bob in the presence of cops. Bob asks him what he wants, but Eric subtly threatens him, telling him it's sunny but you'll never know how it will be. He then takes Bob's umbrella and leaves. The relationship between Bob and Nadia improves thanks to Rocco. As they are chatting in a cafe, Nadia confesses that Bob is the first person to not question him about her neck marks. But Bob believes that it's her own business, and he's not here to be all judgmental. However, Nadia tells him that she has a dark history. She cut her neck with a potato peeler when she was pretty high. She hated her junkie self and was looking to end her life, but she is saved somehow and begins a normal, meaningful life. Back at the bar, Marv shares his concern with Bob about the strange address guy, thinking his life is in danger. Marv is still unable to forget about losing his bar to Chavka Umarov after 10 long years. Marv hates himself deep down, and that's how things go in his life. Bob is shocked to find something bizarre in a trash bag, a chopped hand along with some money covered in blood. They are sent back the stolen money along with one of the robbers' broken watches and chopped hand. They are puzzled about who takes the money back and why. Bob takes the chopped hand inside the bar and starts skillfully wrapping it up, while Marv wonders how skilled he is, as if he's done it 1,000 times. During the job, Eric all of a sudden barged into the bar, as they'd forgotten to close the door. Marv tries to dismiss him, telling him that they're closed. While Bob almost gets caught, Eric greets Bob and leaves the place, despite his will to find out what's going on with the two. Marv is puzzled as to how on earth Bob and Eric know each other. When Bob responds that he is the one who claims to own Rocco, he gets even more worried. It's revealed that he is a local thug who is rumored to be Richie Whelan's killer, to whom the toast is made at the movie opening. Marv reveals to Bob that Eric has spent months in a mental institution and is also a jailbird. He asks Bob not to mess with that guy. However, Bob is surprised by the shocking information. He doesn't look scared. He puts the chopped hand in a duffel bag and heads outside. Once Bob leaves, Marv bursts into tears and starts removing blood from money to hand it over to Chechens. Meanwhile, while playing with Rocco, Bob also throws the wrapped-up arm into the river. He then gets approached by Detective Torres, who wonders if Bob knows about Eric Deeds, which Bob denies. Sometime later, Chechens show up at the bar to get the stolen money back. Shavka also informs them that his bar will be the drop bar for the night of the Super Bowl. Eric goes to Bob and starts questioning him about Nadia, specifically if she stabbed herself yet again lately. Bob goes straight to Nadia, asking her how she knows Eric. The question freaks Nadia out, making her storm off and leaving Bob baffled. Back to Marv, he finds Fitz asking to get in the car. But Fitz is freaked out because he lost his brother to them just like this. He wants to make sure Marv doesn't have the trunk lined in plastic and also shows him his pistol. Marv pops it open, and it's fine. He gets in, and they go for a ride. Marv offers him the Super Bowl's night robbery, when a huge amount of money will be held at the bar, but Fitz turns down his offer and only wants to stay alive. The trunk pops open again, and Marv tells the guy to get out and slam it shut. When Fitz nervously does so, Marv runs him over several times and kills him right away. He then walks away, switches cars, and drives off. In the following scene, Bob and Nadia visit while Nadia feels sorry for her previous behavior. She comes clean to Bob about how Eric and she used to date. Eric was sweet at first, but soon she realized how awful he was, and they broke up. Nadia also alerts Bob that Deeds is the one who killed Richie Whelan, which Bob already knows. Later, Marv meets with Deeds in a diner and tells him that Bob is scared of him. Eric explains that he wants to get more respect from Bob, and if not, there will be a real problem. But Marv calms him down, telling him that he has a solution where everyone can win. While, in fact, his plan is to replace Eric with Fitz to help him with the Super Bowl robbery and distract Eric enough to give up struggling Bob. Detective Torres meets up with his colleague from earlier. He is provided with Eric's psych file, and something in the file attracts his attention. Back home, Bob calls for Rocco, but there is no answer. He finds Rocco just fine in his crate, as well as his umbrella, implying that Eric has been there. He goes to Eric, asking him to back off, and tells him he won't take Rocco back. In response, Eric demands that Bob give him $10,000 to let him keep Rocco, but the latter refuses as the amount is unaffordable. Eric in turn threatens Bob that he will ignore feeding Rocco, and if the puppy asks for food, Eric will smash his head with a rock. The threat leaves Bob speechless, and Eric simply walks off. Marv informs Bob that he won't be at the bar for the Super Bowl. Bob is skeptical. He's doing something crazy that they can't clean up this time. Marv yells at him as he is haunted by his glory days, when he was respected until he lost the bar to Chofka. He is paranoid that Bob always gives Marv's former stool to the old lady to humiliate him. Bob replies that it's just a stool and doesn't mean anything. Back at the bar, Bob tucks $10,000 into the basement, as well as Rocco and a pistol. On the other hand, Eric breaks into Nadia's home, intimidating her into accompanying him to Marv's bar. Despite her initial refusal, Nadia opts to not mess with the goons and accept them. To Bob's despair, they show up at the bar together that night, while Nadia is embarrassed. Marv calls Eric only to find that he is already at the bar because of the commotion. He warns Eric not to underestimate the very soft-spoken and gentle Bob. Marv lines his trunk with plastic and drives to the bar. He parks 2 blocks away to keep an eye on how their plan goes. Throughout the night, various mobster groups drop off money. The bar eventually empties, excluding Eric and Nadia. Eric shows Nadia his gun before going outside to smoke. Nadia sobs and warns Bob that Deeds intends to shoot him. When Eric returns, Bob offers him the money for the dog. Deeds inquires about how much Nadia is worth to him and states that he'd rather have the money in the safe. Bob refuses and starts reciting to him about Richie Whelan, whom he has claimed to kill. He reveals that Marv had a terrible gambling problem while working as a loan shark. Richie was one of many people who owed him money. However, Richie won a large sum of money at the casino and paid off Marv. But it wasn't enough to cover Marv's debt, so Bob tracked him down and shot him twice in the face to keep anybody from knowing that he paid Marv back. Bob then asks Eric that if Bob has killed the guy, how can Eric go around claiming to have done it himself? Bob shoots Eric twice in the face as he begins to respond. He informs Nadia that she is now safe for life and free to leave. She can't believe he trusts her not to tell anyone about the murder. Petrified, she rushes out. The Chechens show up and dispose of Eric's body. Chofka, who liked Bob from the beginning, offers for him to run the bar from now on and also renames the place Bob's Bar. Bob replies that he's just a bartender. But Chofka is adamant, telling him he's the new Marv. Outside, Marv sees the suspicious man from earlier approaching his car. He knows what's next. Marv is shot in the head in seconds. Torres shows up to further investigate while Marv is no longer alive and Eric has gone missing. Bob isn't surprised because this is the type of neighborhood. Torres informs him that the church was purchased for residential development and asks if he will see Bob at the closing, which Bob affirms. It also turns out that Deeds couldn't have killed Richie Whelan because he was in the mental clinic at the time. Torres then leans into Bob's ear and asks in hushed tones, "I bet no one saw you coming." However, the detective is pretty confident that Bob is the one who is behind Richie Whelan's murder as well as Eric Deeds, but he is short on evidence. And most importantly, he'd rather not mess with Papa Umarov's mob. In the final scene, Bob brings Rocco to Nadia's home. Bob then apologizes to her for the night at the bar. Bob is embarrassed by his past behaviors, but he tells Nadia that he has been forced to kill a douchebag like Eric because there will be no end to blackmails of people like Eric. He asks if they can hang out. Nadia is both feared and in love with Bob. She finally agrees, saying, "Let me get my jacket." That's all from the video.